What are your thoughts on the future of secularism in Pakistan and the future of both secular activists and atheist activists in Pakistan?
I think it's difficult to say that which way Pakistan will end up, but historically, if we just look at when these things happen, when significant portion of the society stand up on certain issue, governments end up either crumbling or going with them, and they end up evolving. So I do genuinely believe that every Muslim country that we've looked at, and you covered that one, Armin, with Iran, the Utrecht University, I think it was, that did the study. It is a mind-boggling statistic that 22% people claim to have no religion and 9% are atheists. So this is what 31%. This is more than United States or UK, the number of agnostics and atheists in Iran. And then we see similar numbers in other countries like Tunisia is, I think, 35%. People who call themselves non-religious, or I think Egypt, and there's so many other countries that's growing. Apparently Pakistan was 2% in 2012, but there was another survey done and they revised the figure to 1%. So that was a bit, and that was by Gallup. I don't know how big the study was, but it's a standard study that they do. Gallup does every 6 years or so. So that was a bit disappointing if you go by that. But I do believe that whatever the culture or the social system is in Pakistan, atheism is on the rise, or lack of religiosity is on the rise. So when that happens, that's going to happen everywhere. There will be atheists or non-religious people, secularist people in the military, which is the hub of power in Pakistan. Some people say they already are. The elite already is non-religious, but for some reason they still use the clerics in Pakistan as an insurance policy against India.
Yeah. I know for a fact that there are many people in the military in Pakistan who are out and out atheists. Out and out atheists. Yeah.
But because the society is standing on hypocritical principles, it's not clear with it. That's why you have some really hardcore mullahs in the military as well. So you have those kind of people as well, and obviously there's a lot of video evidence as well how the guy from TLP, the guy who Khadim Rizvi guy, his guys were given envelopes of cash in Faizabad Dharna in 2017, I think it was. So military was actually provoking or encouraging them to just go stand up against the then democratically elected Nawaz Sharif's government. So military still uses them for some reason, but eventually, as I said, overall, now we're seeing. I personally know 4 journalists who are atheists. I know a couple of politicians who are non-religious So a couple in Pakistan's the Imran Khan's party as well. So but again, they would never come out now. But what is to say that it's not going to happen when 20% of Pakistani population says we're agnostic or atheist? Because so I think it will change by 2050, 2040. I think we're going to be living in a different Pakistan.
So the problem is that when demographics change in favor of either secularism or atheism, that doesn't always translate into the politics changing in that direction as well. Sometimes they are moving in the opposite direction, like we see. Sometimes it helps, but sometimes it actually doesn't, right? I mean, United States, people are becoming non-religious more and more, and then the Supreme Court judges became more and more conservative. In Israel is going the wrong direction. Politics was going the wrong direction, even though the demographics was becoming more atheist and more secular. And we have many Arab countries, many even in Malaysia, Indonesia. So, but the interesting thing about Pakistan is that unlike countries like, I don't know, Iran or Saudi Arabia, it's not necessarily the government that is between the people and these political shifts happening, right? If you compare like Pakistan to a country like Iran, where the people want secularism and the government doesn't. But then you look at Pakistan, it's that there are these mobs or these mullahs, and they, even if they are a fraction, I mean, they're big. I mean, but there are many of them, but they're still not the majority, but they still manage to have a huge influence on. They're just a lot more willing to take risk, willing to do things that other people are not able, willing to threaten, willing to use violence, and they intimidate not just other people but also the government. If you want to compare Pakistan to Iran, where most of the problem in Iran is coming from the government, but in Pakistan it's coming from these mobs, from these groups of people, does that make it an easier problem to deal with at some point, or is it more difficult? How do you compare them, and what do you think the impact on the progress is going to be in the future?
Well, I think it is. I would call it an easier problem. Obviously, in case of Iran, as you're 100% right. So the government is more theocratic, while people are more secularist, and it's just only a matter of time when the Islamic Republic of Iran will fall, and some other form of government would be applied. I mean, it's a matter of time. I mean,
I'm not so sure about that, but okay.
Okay. Well, look. I mean, there's been 2 attempts since 2009, and obviously they were brutally crushed. So, I don't know, like how these 30% become 50%. What's going to happen then? And people are going. So we don't know. You're right. I mean, but at least if there is to happen, then that might be the only way to happen, where there has to be another revolution. Whereas in Pakistan, it can gradually evolve. And you're right that Pakistani government, again, is a very, and that's what people say, and I never paid much attention to it. That like they have this identity crisis, and we constantly, and because I personally don't buy into this. I mean, I don't care who my ancestors were or what they believed in. I don't care, but for some reason, people do. And this is why Pakistani textbooks keep changing over time. So sometimes we come from Arabs, sometimes we come from Turks, sometimes we try to import Turkish culture. Sometimes, by the way, we never import Iranian culture for some reason, because it's Shias. I think that's probably why.
Wait, what are you talking about? Your national anthem is in Persian.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's the only thing that is in Persian. Actually, our language is quite.
No.
Our Farsi
language. Our big poet is
Farsi. So language.
Mirza Ghalib wrote the majority of his poetry in Farsi. Right?
Yeah, I think Farsi language is but in terms of the actual heroes that they import, they're either Afghans or Turks or Arabs. So because and I'm saying that being charitable, because I think Pakistan government itself doesn't want to be a hardliner, because there's still some remnants of the Anglo-Saxon British Raj that we had pre-1947, and the founder of Pakistan wasn't a hardline Islamist either. So that's probably why they haven't gone towards Islamism yet as much, but they still aspire to some extent, and they send these mixed messages to down to the local public, and that's why the public demands more and more, because people obviously think that, well, once you import Islam, apply Sharia, everything will be fine. But then even public is confused, because when it comes to voting people, they don't vote for the Islamist parties. They vote for these, these moderate moderate parties. I mean, you shouldn't even be calling them Islamist parties.
I think that is a good. So it's really hard to find a way to measure this stuff. So you talked about the Gallup poll. You talked about when you remember, just a couple of years ago, they were cracking down and lifting up like these sort of Bessa and all these other sort of activists. There was a Hangayaz Nizami thing that was trending there. Everybody was calling for his execution. So they were cracking down on it, and they're cracking down on it, frankly, because it was a threat. So they were cracking down on Facebook posts. I know that I've gotten loads of messages from Twitter saying that Pakistan is asked to remove this tweet or that tweet. I know that you get loads of those too. So
videos, yeah.
They've been cracking down. And Kumar Khuldoon Shahed, who's a journalist in Pakistan, he did a report in The Diplomat on this, about the atheists in Pakistan, how they're communicating. So initially they had the Pakistani atheist agnostic groups on Facebook and things like that. All of that, the government cracked down on, and then they eventually went to these private messaging services like WhatsApp and everybody's kind of scared of that too now. So now they're moving to Signal and some of these other
Telegram and
yeah. So everything is very, very, very covert right now. It's a very difficult thing to get a reading on. You do see, as you said, when you look at the elections, and people still are not voting in large numbers for these Islamist parties, even though everybody goes out and professes their love for them, shows up at Khadim Rizvi's funeral in huge, massive numbers. Like they do all of that, but you just don't see it. I mean, they don't. So for some reason, when it comes to going into the voting booth and figuring out whether you want this to be a part of your daily life and your politics, that's not what they choose. So it's kind of
and I think
it's a hard thing for me, like in terms of
put a finger on. No, but that's because this is why I said it's a good problem to have, because it might be easy. It doesn't require a bloody revolution but I think the reason for that is it's not only hard for us to read. I think it's hard for the Pakistani government and the establishment to figure it out as well, because they can't draw the line either. So they have to. They parroted this anti-blasphemy narrative. But they have never executed anyone under blasphemy because they know that this is bullshit.
That's right.
It's embarrassing for them, and there will be international pressure on them. And but we all know what happened with Asia Bibi. By the way, I don't know if you're aware. There's another incident that happened last month. Another Christian nurse, Tabitha Gill, brutally beaten up by her fellow nurses, and now police refused to register a case.
For singing for a patient a Christian song?
And it wasn't a song. She was saying that pray to Jesus for help or something like that. We never know what the exact truth is. Some people, so whatever. So I think that's probably more likely. It's very similar to what the common belief is. But the police initially didn't, and I've been told the police actually want to stay out of this. But they get intimidated by these mobs of angry people. They initially refused to register a case of blasphemy under her, on her, and then there was nearly 2,000 people surrounded the police station, and they said, "Okay, well now we're gonna arrest her and charge her with blasphemy." They did, and then they put her in protective custody or whatever, which is solitary confinement. Now the case now she's gone. She's gone for another 10 years. The case will linger on for 2 years in the lower court, and then it'll go to a higher court, and then it'll go to Supreme Court. The lower courts are going to sentence her to death, just like it happens in every other case. And then the Supreme Court will say not enough evidence. But unfortunately, 10 years will pass, and this poor woman is going to suffer a lot just for simply what Armin said. So my point is that because the government itself is confused, they throw out this narrative that and it's good that a lot of people are becoming. I was interviewed yesterday by this YouTuber, very educated, he's in Pakistani in Canada. He asked the same thing to me. He said, "Well, Harris, I mean, a lot of people are drawn to your videos. They like it." He said he watched a lot of my videos for research purposes, but he said, I said, "Oh, Rasulullah bungi marte hain." Like what I said, Prophet Muhammad talks crap in Urdu. So he said, "What did you have to use that word?" Because I said, "Well, no. This is why it's so important, because the narrative of blasphemy has been so popularized in Pakistan that now they just passed a legislation a few months ago that said now you have in addition to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you have to say Khatmul Nabiyyin before you say his name, meaning the final prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. You have to say that. If you don't say that, that could be regarded as blasphemy." So this is why it's important for us to humanize Muhammad. We have to bring Muhammad, lower him from that holy cow status, and then treat him like an ordinary people. I said, this is why we use it that way.
Hey guys, if you want to join these streams live, get your comments and questions read by Ali and Armin and the guests, and most importantly, to get full access to the full video versions of all these episodes, become a patron. Link in the description below.